high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. I'm so excited to have my next guest. This is your host, Paul Metsa. I have been on AM 950 for over 10 years now, and not only do I enjoy working with the engineers like Patrick and Brett and Chad Larson, the main man, and the rest, but a man that I've really enjoyed getting to know is my guest tonight. Probably one of the most strongest voices for liberal politics in the state of Minnesota, and actually has, like myself, some deep Iron Range roots. We have a lot of things in common, and I've got nothing but respect for this guy. He's had me on his radio show several times over the years, and I thought with just a few days up to the election, I'd like to turn the tables and do him a favor and let the people out there in AM 950 Radio Land know more about the guy they get to hear every day, and that's the great Mr. Matt McNeil. Matt, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, my friend. How are you?
Good. Well, we're recording this on Halloween, and which, of course, now this election season, every day seemed like Halloween, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, I used to have a lush, full head of hair.
just weeks ago, right?
Back in October 1st, and it's been, yeah. It has been stressful, to say the least. I'm looking forward to it because these little things give me a little bit of a respite from the politics all the time. So I'm looking forward to a little bit of the candy and stuff.
Well, you and I I've really enjoyed getting to know you. I was honored to play at your father's memorial service, your father Charles, up at the Esquagama Country Club.
Yes.
And I've mentioned it before, but it bears repeating because your dad had such a great sense of humor, and obviously you've inherited that. But we had a mutual friend, your dad and I, named John Pasternacki, and John was an Esquagama guy, grew up right on the Lake Esquagama, and at the country club, and knew your dad very well. And he bumped into your dad at a Rolling Stone show about 7 or 8 years ago. And he walked up to him and he said, "Charlie," he said, "I had no idea you were a Rolling Stones fan." And your dad said, "Damn, I thought this was the Beatles."
That's my dad, man.
So great. I still laugh about it. Talk a little bit about Matt McNeil. You know, people hear you every day, but you know, you're always interviewing other people, talking about things that are important to all of us. But I don't know how many people know about Matt McNeil's roots up on the Iron Range. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm one of the things I love about you is that you and I can relate on this base level, because it's one of those things where if you're not from the range a little bit, there's a quirkiness, a weirdness, kind of an understanding that happens when you come from there. My family, I was actually born in Minneapolis, but my family has a long history up there. Emerson Duncan McNeil Sr. was he was one of the foremen of one of the mines up there. And then Charles B. Lenant, who is my other great-grandfather from up there, a lot of people know him. It was the Charles B. Lenant Clinic in Virginia, Minnesota. He actually went up there, and when the logging companies were logging out northern Minnesota, he actually was the contracted doctor, and he had a medical car that they took out on the train tracks to the lumber camps. And
wow.
It was a self-driving car, and he'd take it out there, and he basically would go and service the lumberjack communities as needed. And eventually when they lumbered out in northern Minnesota and the iron ore took over and the Iron Range mining took over, he basically initially started off as a contract doctor with the mining companies. But eventually, as things changed up on the Iron Range, he just became the town doctor. And, for many years, it was the Charles B. Lenant Clinic up there. And once again, connections with my great-grandfather on the other side with the mining community. And I spend a tremendous amount of time. I've spent a large portion of my life, years, up in northern Minnesota, all seasons. And I love being up there. it is just truly just a wonderful place. And yeah, it gets cold. Yeah, okay, fine. But it also is one of those places where you can go and you truly do dip your toes into the nature that was there and has been there for a long time before the white European settlers got there. And there is something brilliant about that. It's one of the things I've enjoyed going to some of these national parks and seeing some of these areas that have been set aside and preserved, because that is something that is truly wonderful. Be able to go up there and see something in it still in a relatively natural form. I just love that.
One of my projects that I'm planning on next summer, and I have a couple of friends of mine that do it, is to plant white pines.
Yeah.
Now we'll never see them in our lifetime, but I'm sure you've traveling around northern Minnesota in the woods. I follow you on Twitter and of course on Facebook, and you're a big outdoors guy, which is why you look so damn healthy, and I don't. But boy, talk about the majesty of seeing a white pine.
You don't see many of them, and I can only kind of when white Europeans got there, I can only imagine what they were looking at when they saw these 1,000-year-old trees that were standing, massive forests that ran at that point from the Iowa border all the way up into Canada. And in a time and an age where they were having trouble finding masts for boats back then, all of a sudden here is a world of it. And there were these huge, beautiful trees that my dad, when he was younger, he said he remembered the stumps still being there, that you'd go out into the woods and you'd see the stumps were still there. Once they cut them all down, well, there are still a few up there. There's a few fledgling virgin forests that are still there that got set aside, that never got lumbered, which was good. And occasionally you'll just come across one for some reason they just didn't cut it down. And it's just a strikingly large, massive tree in northern Minnesota. When they cut them all down, it's unfortunate because first of all, as you said, it's not something in our lifetimes, even if we really assertively went out and planted these trees. I mean, they take hundreds of years to get to the size that they need to get to. But it changed the entire environment of up north. My dad used to tell me, we used to have elk and moose. We never had deer. Deer never used to be up there. And then once they cut down the trees, it changed everything, and they all came on in. And so it's little things like that we've lost. But you can still see it occasionally where you go up there. I am a big fan of it, and I'm a big fan of nature. I do love the Voyagers and the Boundary Waters canoe area going up there. I love the North Shore. There are some areas where when you get around a few of those trees, you can kind of get the idea of how majestic it was, man.
It's funny, and I have a handful of friends that moved out that go to Phoenix and Florida in the winter, and God bless them, because I have places I'm still on a good enough relationships with them where I could go down and stay when I'd like. But the thing about northern Minnesota that you mentioned, right off the top, it does get cold. In fact, I'm recording this from my living room in Duluth, and it's overcast, maybe 35. Not a great day to trick or treat, but we expect it. But the thing I love about, besides we have 25% between Lake Superior and the Boundary Waters, almost 25% of the world's fresh water, is you can walk anywhere in the woods in northern Minnesota and never run into a poisonous snake.
Well, those people that move to Phoenix and Miami, you notice they don't do a lot of bragging come July and August. They're not talking about how great things are down there as they melt. I can always put on a sweater. There's only so many clothes I can take off and legally still be on the street.
I'm reminded of the last time I was, I think at Calhoun Beach, and I was just a few years ago. It was a beautiful July day, and I went out and I had kind of my swimsuit. I'm not rocking the Speedos anymore like high school. And I had a nice kind of boxer trunks swimming suit on, but it was weird because I could feel women dressing me with their eyes.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, are you sure you don't want to go in the water with a shirt on? I think it's an option for you. Here's the epitome. And this has got a little bit of a music flair to it.
Sure.
The epitome of northern Minnesota and how the cold just doesn't stop you is it was Christmas Eve. God, this is back in the 90s. And for some reason, one of my brothers says, "Hey, let's go into town." I'm like, "Why?" It's Biwabik, Biwabik, Minnesota, which is known for having the bar sauna, which is no longer there, but it was still magnifique. It was really, truly a bit of Iron Range culture that you just couldn't find. A bar sauna. Let's go sweat and drink. And he says, well, the Biwabik bar has a bus that they'll send out to come get you because it was like minus 40. It was brutally cold. And we're like, we don't want to drive in there and have to hopefully the car will start again. So the Biwabik bus says they'll come pick us up. So all of a sudden, out on Esquagama comes the Biwabik bus, and it picks us up. To say there were 100 beer bottles rolling around on the floor of that bus is an underestimate. Most of them I don't think were empty because it smelt like the bartender had a seizure at some point. And so we drive into Biwabik, and there is a question that I think people will always ask. What's the worst band playing the worst gig in any given year? The Christmas Eve show at the Biwabik Bar Sauna really wasn't getting the cream of the crop as far as bands. I think it was a heavy metal band where I think 3 of them probably had never played with each other before and didn't know which songs they were playing.
I probably know all those guys. You shall remain homeless.
That was not good. And of course, then we lose my brother, and I go find him. He's in the sauna in his jeans. With his shirt off, with a beer in his hand, trying to talk up a girl. And I'm like, okay, no. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everybody. That's the kind of culture you have. That story doesn't happen unless it is so brutally cold that we have to call the Biwabik bus. And I really do not think that bus driver was safe to drive, by the way, either. I just really do not think so.
I actually played a New Year's Eve in Biwabik at the Black Diamond Bar.
Okay.
It would have been 20 years ago. My old buddy Jimmy Molenbrock ran it. And then my band, Cats Under the Stars, I don't know if you remember, you might. There was a bar right when you come into town, right on the right, called the Tumbleweed. And my band, Cats Under the Stars, started to play there every Tuesday night for, summer 76 and 77. And then what we used to do, when we'd get done with the gig, we'd head back to Virginia where we were all staying, and we would hit one of the open pit mines and do a little skinny dipping on our way home.
Some of the best lakes to dive in, man. Those are some fun lakes. I'm going to say this, and no joke. At some point, I might have seen you as a young kid in Biwabik because we used to my grandparents used to live up there in the summer. They had a 1-season cabin, and that was generous. And they'd go out there. They'd spend their winters down in Borrego Springs till we remodeled it, and my grandmother could move up there full time. But that we went up there, and we'd be at Sand Lake just north of Virginia.
Sure,
we'd drive over. And we would go see. There was one year I distinctly remember us going into an event in Biwabik. I don't know if it was their summer festival or whatever it was, but I remember we stayed and watched a band play. I believe it was on the right hand side. I'm trying to think what's there now. I don't think it's the gas station that's there, but it's.
It looked close. I just drove by there. I drove up to Ely, and I always like to take that. I go through, cut off 53 right before Eveleth, and then I drive up through Biwabik and then hike up to Tower and then over to Ely.
Yeah.
But, I don't think there was anything there at the time. It very well could have been me, Matt.
Well, no, it was... I remember there was an event going on or something like that. But I remember going and seeing a band there in the 1970s, and I was a little kid, and of course I was just getting dragged around by this stuff. But I mean, that was kind of the fun thing is you realize not only do you have this wonderful nature, and I could go out to Sand Lake and I could fish and I could swim and I could just have a good time out there as a kid. But then occasionally we'd go into these towns, and Iron Range towns, they're kind of fun. They are kind of fun. So.
Still to this day, we're going to listen to a song of mine called St. Louis County Fair, kind of about the magic of a county fair on the Iron Range, and then we'll be back with Matt McNeil for the whole show.
It was Saturday night at the Midway, on Mardi Gras Midwestern style. I was with my man, a junk boy from Jersey. a devil's cap and Napoleon smile. We had our tea leaves read by Lady Samantha. Said now one of us would fall in love. But the junk boy had Madam Alexa. She wasn't pretty, but she was mighty tough. Said anything could happen, anything it ain't all it appears. Dead men sing a song, weak men become strong. Pretty women just fly through the air. St. Louis County Fair, St. Louis County Fair. Dead men sing this song, weak men become strong. Pretty women just fly through the air. It was midnight when I laid eyes upon her. She was walking down the firewood road. She grabbed me like I knew her forever, and the sky was about to explode. She rolled knickers and we ate cotton candy. We took a ride on an old Ferris wheel, and we kissed by the lights of the city. And at the top I said we hung by our heel. Won a blackhead at the ring toss, shot plastic ducks in a pond. I started to miss her, first time I kissed her. Just in a flash she was gone. The St. Louis County Fair, the St. Louis County Fair. Dead men sing a song, weak men become strong. Pretty women just fly through the air. Well, the next day I went to the fairground where that carnival light used to be. You know I might have been dreaming. All I saw was a hobo sleeping under a tree. When the junk boy rolled out of the bushes with a martini winning ring in his ear. Postcard from Lady Samantha. See you sailors same time next year. True love it never comes.
Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Welcome back to the second set of the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. We're speaking with the great Matt McNeil. We were just talking a little Iron Range, Love and Magic in the first set. That little bumper music is done by the Divas, which is a great, they're kind of like the Andrews sisters of the Iron Range. They recorded that for me about 7 or 8 years ago. If you're ever up that way, you've got to check out the Divas, Matt McNeil, and also the piano player, kind of the leader of that band, is Shannon Gunderson. You might have seen her over the years. She at Nick's Bar in Gilbert, or she plays, boy, you have an event, like, for example, she also runs the Land of the Loon in Northside Park.
Does
you
she?
bumped into my good friend Shannon. My mother started Land of the Loon.
Did she?
In 1976 with her friend Pearl Antonovich. My mother she was a very big civic booster. In fact, there's a beautiful park next to Bailey's Lake in Virginia, which is the best Metsa Memorial Park. If you're ever there, you've got it's won awards for its beautiful presentation of flowers. But my mother always thought that they should have an arts fair. So I remember it was the summer of 76. We went to every neighborhood. We lived on 8th Street North, right around the corner from the Lenant Clinic, which is on 9th Street. And we got every picnic table and lawn chair we could. I banged on a guitar, and we had a couple of artists painting there on their easels. And that was the first Land of the Loon Arts Festival. And now it's been going on for almost 50 years, I guess.
It was packed. Because you mentioned my father. When he had his memorial, we were up there in the summer of 2019, and that was at Alcott Park. And it was packed to the gills. I mean, it's become it's a true success story that you've been. I did not know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it brings literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to not only Virginia but the neighboring towns over the course of that weekend. So always the third weekend of June. It's a great way to celebrate art and the Iron Range. Now, Matt, wasn't even thinking about it, but I did have for lunch today a pasty.
I had pasties 2 nights ago, man.
I went with the Zups pasty because I was up in Ely, and Zups makes a good one. But for those of you that have ever heard Matt and I chat, we at some point we always talk about our favorite pasties, and we agree you got to go to Paul's Market in Evelyn.
Paul's in Evelyn is that they do the right crust there, and it was like a lot of things up there. Now, my grandparents, my dad's parents. They were there, and of course they were kids of their parents. Their parents drugged them up there in their areas, and they distinctly remember when the Italians got there. Because everything up until that point really was flavorless and did not do too well. And when their first place, there was an Italian market that used to be in Virginia, and their first place was above that. And they said how much they loved it because it was the smell of bread was just unbelievable. Yeah. And the Italians came in, and not only that, but they fixed the Scottish recipes too, because there's a great breakfast one called Bannocks, which they couldn't figure out forever. And the Italians said, oh, and here's what you need to do. And they figured it out. And it's fantastic. But yeah, the Italians came in in the 1900, 1910, 1920s, and they fixed a lot of these recipes. And they took pasties, which were really kind of a working man's, handheld meat pie, and they turned them into this freaking thing that's divine. And it's just wonderful. And if you get it, Paul's Italian Market in Evelyn makes great ones. If they do the suet crust, boy, you really are in for something special.
We had some very good friends. Well, they're still good friends of ours. The Paglicettis that grew up in Parkville, which was a little town between Virginia and Mount Iron. And my dad, Elder Metsa, who is a school board, city council, 2 terms of mayor of Virginia, Minnesota, that I'm proud to say, taught with John Paglicetti. His son, Gary, was the drummer in my first band, The Positive Reaction. Gary became the youngest judge in St. Louis County, recently retired this last year. He became a judge at the age of 29 and held forth for over 40 years. But we used to go to the Paglicettis one Sunday a month. Number one, they had this was like we're talking mid-1960s. They had one of the first color TVs, which was just like, man, we are living in the future now. And we'd have lasagna and rigatoni and I remember when I was just a young kid, I'd ask my mother, I said, Mom, can we become Catholics? I go, well, they have better food than we do. Thinking that, they were Italian and Catholic, but I'm still a big, I love my Italian food.
Oh God, and they do it so well. And it was like I said, they figured this stuff out. I grew up, so I was born in Minnesota. I moved up to Rhode Island when I was a kid. And Rhode Island's all Portuguese and Italians. That's all it is. So it's the best seafood you'll ever have. It really is magnificent. And it's just simple and it's easy. And so it was one of those things where you realize when I was coming back, and I just grew up with good Italian food. And you come back, it's like, wow, the Italians up here are just amazing. And I think it's there. One of the things which I find to be great about northern Minnesota is that it does have a culture down even into the food. And that you can get the influx of all these different cultures that were there that came in, whether it's the Native American culture with the wild rice and the Scandinavian cultures with some of the lutefisk and stuff like this, and the Italians bringing in the red sauce and the good breads. It really has created its own vibe. And I have taken people up there and they're like, how is this food not better and well known? And I said, I don't know, because you throw a little fresh fish in there, a little duck. I mean, you're doing fantastic. And so it really is. It's kind of one of the better parts, I think, of northern Minnesota. And I'm not willing to share it so much. I don't necessarily. The Great Water Smokehouse guys down in Duluth wrote their fantastic cookbook about this. I was like, you guys, you need to keep this on the down low, man. You can't be telling people about this stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. That's the same way I feel about Duluth. It's like we've got enough people up here already. It's one of the finest cities in America. I've been saying it since I was a kid because well, it was a big deal to go from the Iron Range from my hometown of Virginia, Minnesota, down to Duluth to see the Home and Boat Show,
Yeah.
see the City at the North parade, just a wonderful parade at Christmas time. And over the years, then I got old enough to go to the rock concerts down here. And now that I live up here, it's like, let's kind of keep this a secret because we got enough people. One of the cool things about Duluth, and you and I were able to get together when you were here this summer, because I believe your daughter is going to UMD.
Yeah, she's up at UND.
It is that one of the cool things about Duluth is that especially during spring, summer, and fall, there's so many tourists here. Overall, everybody is in a really good mood because they're all on vacation.
Well, it's such a unique part of America, and having grown up in Rhode Island, having been on the ocean, there's anywhere from Duluth all the way up to Grand Marais, there is this almost nautical, oceanic feel to the community. Yeah. I mean, and to a point where it really is ensconced, but it also has these just unbelievable views. I mean, Lake Superior is gorgeous. It really is. And the whole North Shore is fantastic. So, and not only that, I mean, I remember when that Grandma's Marathon, just keeps bringing more and more people in. You can't find a hotel room within 100 miles of Duluth that weekend.
Right.
You do, I just, you was talking about UMD. I tried to do Parents Weekend. We don't do Parents Weekend because you can't find a hotel room because people are looking for reasons to go up there. And it's got a great food culture. It's got a great beauty culture. As you said, it does not shy away from its location, which means that there are fun things to do year round. And I think there's so many people, whether it's the Leif Erikson Rose Garden, which is just spectacular, or if you just go up and do the Scenic Overlook Trail, there are so many things to do there. I agree with you. It to a point, I want people to go see it because it truly is special. But the more people that go up there and experience it, the more kind of it loses a little bit of that,
How harder it is to get a hotel room.
Okay. I'm in Cloquet, man. I'll be over by Gordy's. There's a hotel over by there.
Well, let's not forget Gordy. I mean, it's one of the best burgers in northeastern Minnesota.
Absolutely.
Gordy's not with us anymore. I was able to take a picture of Gordy. I was there about 6 years ago. And, Gordy worked with his wife until they were in their 80s.
Yeah.
And just, wonderful couple. And, what was cool about them, they'd have 12 or 15 high school kids working for them every summer. And so they always employed the youth up there, gave them some of their first jobs. Some of those kids would come back just in the summertime to work for Gordy and his wife. Getting back to Duluth, I always considered it, Matt McNeil, the little San Francisco.
Oh yeah, I would say that I was just in San Francisco earlier this year, and San Francisco is gorgeous. I mean, it really is. It's on par with these great European towns. I was up in Cow Hollow, which is kind of on the Golden Gate side. Looking back up behind you is Pacific Heights, and then of course the downtown is to the right. The Golden Gate Bridge is to the left. And I was sitting here, and it is so stunningly beautiful. But it is exactly like that. Duluth is a city that said, "Oh, that's a horrible place to try to build something flat. Well, let's do it there." And the hills in Duluth are pretty spectacular. They give you great views, but it doesn't make any sense that it would be there outside of the fact that of course, the natural port, and because of it is the furthest away from the oceanic port on the planet. That's one of the things about Duluth, which is great. And so you do get this interesting culture that said, okay, torpedoes be damned, we're building it here. I'm to a point, it is really interesting to go up to the top of the hill and see how much it's developed up there. Because it was not something that, pretty much it was only on the side of the hill, very kind of European, almost Italian or Scandinavian to a point for so many years. But now it really is, it's growing. I love Duluth. It really is a wonderful city. And it is good to see after, especially the downturn, as you saw, that, a lot of that town was empty for a long time. Now it's prime property.
Well, in the 1980s, and I did my first big gig. I opened up for Taj Mahal at the North Shore Theater in 1984.
Wow.
And it was an incredible night. I just put out my first record, Paper Tigers, and opened up for Taj. And I was a huge Taj fan. Like musicians of my age that got into roots music and blues and acoustic folk, we weren't old enough, so we didn't get to see Mississippi John Hurt, Sleepy John Estes. I saw Muddy Waters once, Reverend Gary Davis, but we got hip to all those musicians through Taj Mahal, Ry Cooder, Bob Dylan, John Hammond Jr., Bonnie Raitt. So I opened up for Taj. I do my 30, 40-minute set. Went really well, if I may say so myself. Taj does about 2 hours and a half. Dave Snaker Ray, his old buddy, is playing next door on the corner where Bell Bank is now. It used to be a little cafe. Taj goes next door and sits in with Dave for about an hour and a half. So now Taj has about 4 hours of music under his belt.
Wow.
It's about 11 o'clock at night. We go up the hill to my good friend John Ward, longtime Duluth musician who ran Amazing Grace Cafe for a long time. He was the main song guy there, great folk singer. So the jam starts about midnight. And so there was about 3 or 4 of us sitting around with guitars. I remember Taj Mahal had a pen that said 40 and feeling sexy. And freaking Taj Mahal, I'm sitting across from him in John's living room, and we're playing old folk and blues tunes. Wow. Finally now, my show started about 7 or 7:30 with Taj. So Taj has been at it 4 hours on different stages, an hour at the jam. The jam starts at midnight. Finally, at about 3:30 or 3:45 in the morning, Taj is still ahead. I go, Taj, I'll tell you what, you win. I got to go back to the hotel and crash.
Taj Mahal, man, I've gotten into blues myself. You know this. I talked to you when I went down to New Orleans last year, and I said, "What do you recommend?" And I went down to Preservation Jazz Hall, and I saw 3 Hall of Fame jazz musicians playing a 9-piece band, and the other 6 are all going to go into the hall without a doubt. Right. I mean, it was amazing. But sometimes you just stumble upon something, and my parents had to move out of Biwabik because with the mobility issues and stuff, they were up in Esquagamun. It's not really a place where if you can't get out, it's a good place to be in winter. So they moved down to Beaufort, South Carolina, which is just up the coast from Savannah, Georgia. It's Savannah, Hilton Head, and then Beaufort. And they lived there, and right next to Beaufort's the town of Port Royal. And the last time I went down to visit my dad down there, he said, they have some bands that come and play, and you're not thinking that much. It's down in Port Royal. There's a Smokehouse Barbecue, which is right there, that has a fantastic oyster po' boy and just fantastic, that South Carolina mustard barbecue. It's just brilliant. And we go out there, and so we're thinking I'm going out here to mainly get some food and watch some local band and play. You get there, it's literally the street. It's probably about 100 people with lawn chairs. They've got a stage, which is like an elementary school stage where it's a little set up down there. So we go get the food, come out here, and they come on as on playing Port Royal is Joe Louis Walker. Walker? Are you freaking kidding me? Joe Louis Walker comes on out with his band, plays for like 5 hours just to start, in this god-awful South Carolina heat into the night. And it was wonderful to see because, first of all, it was this great glimpse of the Southern culture with the blues, to watch everyone come together in the street and dancing and having a good time. My dad got up. He was dancing there. My wife and I were dancing in the street to Joe Louis Walker. It was unbelievable. And I said, there's like 100. He's playing here. And it's one of those things where you realize those guys just couldn't stop. Taj Mahal, your story, he just couldn't stop playing. He's like, give me a show. I don't care if it's on the street in Port Royal, South Carolina. I want to play. And it was one of my favorite music experiences of my life, was sitting there because my dad was there, fantastic food, amazing music, and the beautiful South Carolina night. It was just wonderful.
And then you've got too, with that blues thing, because when I think, I'm a huge student of the blues. If you look behind me, those are all music books behind me.
I've been to your place, man.
Yeah, and it's just, you think about whether it's any of these guys, Son House or Robert Johnson, And they're playing in these juke joints at, what's it, 100 degrees inside?
Yeah.
105? And they're playing all night long. So it's cool. You're down there with the heat.
In a suit. In a suit. They're playing in a suit in that heat.
Oh, yeah, right. On top of it. We're going to listen to a little Taj Mahal, and then we're going to get back one more set with Matt McNeil, and we're going to get some predictions for what's going to happen this coming Tuesday.
You're going to need somebody on your bone, child. You're going to need somebody on your bone. Oh, when it's late at midnight and old man death come on slipping in the room, you're going to need somebody on your bone. Mary and Martha standing on the hillside. Mary's explaining to Martha, darling, look at the water deep in the river wide. Here come old Moses, faithful Moses. He pulling his stones up the hill, telling everybody they're gonna need somebody on their bone. I gotta play a little gospel now. Side on their bone. Oh, I've been listening to them people ever since the day I was born. Yes, you know, my mama raised me in a room across from the church in a tree, and the sweet music used to comfort me. And you know, I've had the music, the souls, the sweet, sweet gospel music on my bone. Ooh, you gonna need somebody on your bone.
Wall of Power Radio Hour.
You are back with the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa, my guest and friend for the whole show tonight. You hear him every day on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, Mr. Matt McNeil. Matt, how you feeling about Tuesday night?
I'm feeling good. And I mean, there's a lot of signs out there that are pointing in the right direction. I will say this, it is amazing how much noise the right can create to try to drown out the truth. But I've spent a lot of time looking at things, and especially, once again, women save us. The early woman vote, I think at the election day, if the voters turn up, this is already over. You're seeing signs from the Trump campaign that they're already giving up on Pennsylvania. North Carolina is not going well for them, but that has a lot to do with their god-awful governor candidate over there. That even Georgia, even Florida, I think is in play. And I don't think it's too out of line to think that Florida might actually go blue. It voted for Obama both times, so it's not out of the line for that to happen. I hope it does, because the real question is what happens after this election. And if it's not a blowout, I think it's going to be a long time in court cases. But I think in the end, it still will be a Harris win. But reality is I think that enough of us don't want the doom and gloom of Donald Trump anymore. And Kamala Harris with Governor Walz, has done a fantastic job of giving us an idea of the vision that just this world just does not have to be anger, darkness, and hate. It can be joy and happiness. And frankly, I want to go back to that. I'm tired of the age of Trump.
Well, and likewise, ditto. And I like what Colin Aldred down in Texas.
Yes.
we might be able to get rid of, tail gunner Ted. So there's
Cancun Ted, yeah.
yeah. But what do you think? Biden kind of stepped in it with the stutter and the garbage comment. But I saw some people, and I love following you on Twitter, and you're taking Rice White to the cleaners every day. God bless you, Matt McNeil. But was Donald Trump getting in the garbage truck? Was that his Dukakis moment?
That was, I mean, there is the greatest cell phone I've seen. And I mean, Dukakis wasn't trying to, they put him in a tank and they had one bad picture and they made him look bad. Trump puts his name on the side of a dump truck and then proudly brings it out. I'm like, what are you doing? I will say this, Joe Biden says the voters are garbage, but he said it part of a long thing. You have to take it out of context for it to be bad. This is after Donald Trump has a rally where they call Puerto Rico garbage and he calls America a garbage can. He's called Democrats garbage. They've 9 years of this constant demeaning and dismissing. The fact that the news media went crazy because Joe Biden said this, I'm like, I'm sorry. I think the one thing that I was glad about was the way that America called that out and said, wait a second here, you've been tolerating Trump. Biden saying it one time doesn't make him the bad guy here. And, right. It shows your inconsistency in covering it. The reality is I mean, I'm a veteran. I'm wearing my Army shirt right now. I'm a veteran. I love this country, and I love what this country represents. And I am tired of this constant hate and negativity. And like I said, I still think that this is going to be a pretty big day for the Democrats on Tuesday. And God willing, we purge ourselves from this scourge that is known as Donald Trump.
From your mouth to God's ears, Matt McNeil, I want to tell you once again, not only do I enjoy our friendship, but I really appreciate your bravery on the front lines there on AM 950, running that great progressive line of fire every day for the rest of us. Keep it up. You still got a few days to go. And I will be checking in with you soon. And if I had a beer, I would be toasting you, Mr. Matt McNeil. I've got nothing but respect for you, my brother.
My brother, thank you very much. It's an absolute privilege and honor to be on your show. It is a wonderful show. Thank you so very much for having me here.
Have a beautiful rest of your week, Matt.
You take care, my friend.
Thanks for listening to the Wall and Power Radio Hour. The show was produced by Paul Metsa, engineered by Brett Johnson. We'd like to thank our guest, Matt McNeil. Hear him every day on AM 950. You can follow me at paulmetsa.com. Most of my books and records are available at the Electric Fetus in Minneapolis. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.
The high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers.